Welcome to Hoystory on Air, Season 1, I think episode 24. I think I checked it the other day, or earlier today. It is Tuesday, December 16th, 2025. Got a couple stories for you today. One's kind of a stupid GOP politician one, and we are going to follow up on the I've learned it's Bondi Beach attack, not Bondi. Aussies have funny ways of pronouncing things, and so it's Bondi. We'll see if I can remember that. So, first things first. I love this. You gotta love it. You have to love this. It's required. Vanity Fair has a two-part piece. They released both parts today, so it's like, why do you even divide them into part one and part two? Maybe it's length, but you're a magazine, so length usually isn't necessarily a big issue. Anyways, Eye of the Hurricane, Vanity Fair, not National Review, not the late Weekly Standard, not the American Conservative, not the Federalist website. Vanity Fair has their reporters had on the record sit-down interviews with Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles. It's not an altogether flattering view of the White House and how it operates and how she operates and how Trump operates. Lots of it's the kind of thing you might see in a memoir after the president's out of office, some of it. How much of it's true, how much, I don't know. I just don't know. National Review, they're doing damage control. Soon after the interviews were published, Wiles criticized Vanity Fair's coverage, and her White House colleagues rushed to her defense. The article published this morning is a disingenuously framed hit piece on me and the finest president, White House staff, and cabinet in history. But they probably believe it. Significant context was disregarded, and much of what I and the others had said about the team and the president was left out of the story. I assume after reading it, that this was done to paint an overwhelmingly chaotic and negative narrative about the president and our team. The truth is the Trump White House has already accomplished more in 11 months than any other president has accomplished in 8 years, and that is due to the unmatched leadership and vision of President Trump, for whom I have been honored to work for the better part of a decade. Does she believe this? Or does she feel compelled to say it? If she believes it, this is a more damning condemnation of our educational system here in this country, because it's not true. It's not close to being true. You can choose a lot, for good and ill, of presidents who've accomplished more than Donald Trump. It's Wilson on the minus side, the plus side, Louisiana Purchase. That was bigger. Lots of stuff. But this is what you should expect. Ladies and gentlemen, Republicans, if you want to get, and Trump's does this too. Trump's got, what's her name? There's a reporter on the Washington Post who's always buddy with Trump. Trump talks to her all the time, and she, stabs him in the back. Sometimes deservedly so. But you talk with some of these reporters, and look, they are not conservative. They are left-leaning almost to a man, or to a woman, or to a cisgen, non-binary something or the other. They're overwhelmingly left-leaning. They are definitely not MAGA, and they are definitely not fans of you. And I don't know what kind of Dane Bramage you had to suffer to believe that you're going to get a fair shake or a positive story out of this. Just not smart. I will say this, and I've told people this repeatedly, and this is true no matter what your politics, left or right, whack job, crazy or not. Look, if you are being interviewed by the news media, I don't care if it's the local weekly newspaper or Dateline or one of these or 48 Hours or one of these national or 60 Minutes. I don't care which one. I don't care if it's the smallest thing. I don't care if it's the biggest thing. Record it. Record the interview yourself. Because that way you've got backup when they do you dirty. Okay? So that is my advice. And that goes for even if it's a puff piece. Even if they're coming out, supposedly do a puff piece about your brand new restaurant or what, record the whole thing. Have a camera running, have your own audio, record everything. And frankly, if the journalist balks at that, if the person doing the story balks at you recording it yourself, cancel it. Because if I can't think of an honest journalist who would oppose that. Really. I certainly never would have. To give you an idea, there's a couple things. I read both parts. It's interesting. I don't know how much of it's true or not. It doesn't paint them necessarily in a great light. But there were a couple things that jumped out at me, for all the talk about, fact check, their fact checking operation. They check every fact, blah, 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 blah. Bolshevik storytelling still gets into the reports. And so here's two examples of it. On the left, historically, the White House Chief of Staff is the president's gatekeeper, confidant, and executor of his agenda. That often means telling the president hard truths. Upon taking office, Ronald Reagan was hell-bent on reforming Social Security. James A. Baker III explained to him that cutting Social Security benefits was the third rail of American politics. Reagan pivoted to tax cuts and was ultimately reelected in a landslide. For the record, Social Security is still a problem 30 years later, 30 plus years later, 40 years later. 40 years later, it's still a problem because no one's willing to touch it because, frankly, the media and the Democrats play this game. It's the same game they're playing with the extension of the Obamacare subsidies. It's, if you change this, you're killing grandma. Just how far will Trump veer off the guardrails of democracy? That's the author of the piece speaking. That is, it shows a bias of where you're coming from, and frankly, it's kind of unnecessary. You can make the point with quotes and with reciting facts. That's just gratuitous. On the right, we have a recounting of the January 6th and Trump issuing pardons, in which 9 people ultimately died. How do you get that number? 1 person died. Ashley Babbitt, she was a protester. She was breaking through a window. And frankly, for me, it's a little questionable whether that was a good shoot, but you're never going to, kind of asking for it at a certain point. I know that's not a popular thing to say with MAGA people, but let's be honest. And I've had, I've gotten into arguments with people about this on Facebook and again, it's people who bring their politics to Facebook. Sicknick was killed, blah, blah. It's like, no, he died 3 days later of a brain aneurysm or a stroke. And the doctors say that was unrelated to what happened 3 days earlier. So there's no evidence for that. But that's where they start counting. They start counting suicide, people who suicided, months later, blah, blah, blah. That's why they say ultimately died. 1 person died. It was a protester. who was shot and killed by a Capitol Police officer. That's it. Honesty would require you to state that plainly and not play this game. But you're not going to get treated, Republicans, mainstream media, they're not going to treat you fairly, even if you deserve fair treatment. Again, I don't know. This is coming from a left-leaning magazine. Why don't you have the Federalists reporter in there? The Federalists are full-on MAGA, sometimes to an overly stupid extent. But why don't you have that reporter do something like this? Talk to them. No, you picked Vanity Fair. Why? Because you still want their approval. You're never going to get their approval. You didn't get that approval when Reagan was president. You don't get it when George W. Bush is president. You don't get it. You're never getting it. They don't like you. Come to grips with it. Accept it. Move on. Jeez. Second story. Bondi Beach. I'll get to it. Bondi Beach. Speaking of bad journalism, this is this is ABC News. This is ABC News US, not the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. This little clip comes to us courtesy of the Media Research Center. Hey guys at Media Research Center, be a nice guy and allow me to just download the clips off Twitter. You can do that setting. Otherwise, I've got to go through a bunch of hoops to get it. Look, you're still getting credit. Your watermarks there. And I'm saying it. Media Research Center, great guys. Make it easier for me, guys, please. Take a listen to this.
As for the suspect, authorities say one of them was a licensed gun owner with 6 firearms, but they have not yet revealed a motive. Guys,
we'll find that out ahead.
They haven't revealed a motive. Who knows what the motive is? I don't know what the motive is. You don't know what the motive is. The report, we already have reporting they had ISIS flags in their cars. They attacked a Hanukkah celebration. What could the motive be? I've got no idea. I don't know why we pretend this game. This is just crazy. I'd like to say it's crazy. It's crazy. It's stupid. It's crazy. Here's another one. This one is... What is this? This is one of the news stations. I think it's the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. I could be wrong. But this was captured on... reposted on X/Twitter. Take a listen to this one, too.
How are we feeling? Is this what you wanted? Is this enough now? Will you?
Let me try that again. See if I can get you the video. You can hear the audio, but I'm going to see if we can get the video to play right. I don't know why sometimes it plays okay and other times it doesn't. It's a mystery. We'll see.
How are we feeling? Is this what you wanted? Is this enough now? Will you listen to us? Albanese, Wong, will you listen to us? Will you actually do something? Will you actually... don't have to stand up and say anything because we don't believe you anyway. And ABC, I've got to say, will you cut out the biased reporting? Mainstream media, we feel will you cut it out? Will you actually let us have a voice? Because we feel that part of the reason that the Jewish people have experienced such a massive change in Australia towards us. I mean, I'm Aussie. You know, but, and I'm not a religious Jewish girl, but a woman. But since October the 7th, since all the hatred that's been thrown at us, I started to wear my Magen David because I'm Jewish. And if you have something to say, you can say it to me. And ABC, please stop with the biased reporting.
Victoria, we are so sorry for what you are going through and what you have been through, and we really hope that your father recovers.
Great for calling them out, because they need to be called out. We'll talk some more about the media and what's been going on there and the government down there in Australia. They got problems. They've got the same problem that lots of European countries have created for themselves with immigration and who is immigrating and what, and the lack of assimilation. We in the U.S. have a similar problem, but not to the extent. We're getting more immigration here from Central and South America, less from Muslim countries. Somalia is obviously a problem there in Minnesota. But we can also continue making mistakes longer without reaching the tipping point that it's reached over in Europe and Australia, because we're simply a larger country. We've got more population. We can deal with, the old line about poison is it's not necessarily, it's the dosage, it's how much is lethal. Sometimes you can take a tiny bit of it, you're okay. You might get sick, but it's not lethal. And there are other things where if you take a little bit of it, it can be beneficial, and more of it's poison. But we can take more of that here in the United States. Talked a lot yesterday about guns and gun laws and Australia versus the U.S. and mass shootings, that sort of stuff. And per capita is a very important thing to keep in mind. This next item here, this is from Discernible. This is an Australian-based podcast. And they are not going to solve Australia's problem by liberalizing guns and allowing Jews to defend themselves. It says Australians will never accept guns. As a law-abiding Australian farmer and firearms user, I know that further restricting gun rights, we actually don't have any rights, we have exemptions to possess prohibited weapons, will not solve our terrorism problem. I know that if we had more good guys with guns, Bondi would have ended much sooner. I would not have hesitated to put myself on the line and shoot back. It's a moral obligation if you are trained and armed. But I would also never take my rifle to the beach, so I'd never have the opportunity, because they're not allowed handguns. If you try to roll out safe, well-trained, and well-armed gun culture to everyday Australians, like Texas, I'm afraid all you get is mass accidents. I'm not altogether confident that if you get good training and people who accept that training and who have the proper mindset that, I mentioned this yesterday, in America, when you had shall issue gun permits in a lot of states, about 10% of the eligible population, which means most states, I think it was 21 and over, and no criminal background, about 10% of that population went and got gun permits. Maybe in Australia, it's 5 or 4. Still better than 0. Still better than 0. Our population has been infantilized for so many generations. I'm not even sure we would function for 1 week in a U.S.-style government shutdown. We rely on government so much. It's now in our bones. We just rejected castle law, defend your home. And despite knowing cops either aren't coming or might be here in 2 hours, this guy lives in rural Australia, we still think the right thing to do is always to call the cops, then hide and wait. Our population is entirely urbanized and never sees guns. We think guns magically leap off the table and explosively massacre everyone in the room. They aren't magical, dangerous weapons of mass destruction, Premier of New South Wales to nearly all of us. My plan is to simply minimize city trips and mass gatherings, stay rural as much as possible. At least everyone out here is less neurotic and doesn't call the cops in a panic when they see a dead deer on the road. Yes, happened recently. We'll see. I'm not sure what to tell you on that as far as what Australia could be willing to do. It's obvious with their current government, they're not going to take the step of arming Jews or arming their population. They got a problem. Over at National Review Online, Noah Rothman has a piece. There's a word for the West's appeasement of militant Islam. That word is dhimitude, or dhimmi, D-H-I-M-M-I. It's basically what non-Muslims live under Muslim rule. Okay, it's you have less rights if you're not Muslim. You'll have to excuse Jack back here. He's got a cold. We're working on that. He's got a cold. Thanks, Jack. Appreciate it. These responses were the whole blaming whatever, blaming Jews, blaming, just a few people, blah, blah, blah. These responses were designed to collectivize the guilt that should have been reserved for a limited number and defined set of individuals who insist on accommodation for their bigotries. Even in liberal societies ostensibly dedicated to political pluralism and religious toleration, it helped Australian authorities to create a fiction that seemed a comfort only to them. We've had synagogues that have been graffitied, said Victoria Teplitsky, the daughter of one of the victims of that attack. In describing the harrowing experience long endured by Australia's Jews, we've had synagogues that have been bombed. This is not a surprise to us. So it's just this acceptance of, this is the new normal. Australia has imported a huge Muslim population. They had tens of thousands march anti-Israel 2 days after October 7th down there, across the, to the Sydney Opera House. Tens of thousands. And Australia hadn't done anything yet as far as retribution or even trying to get their kidnapped citizens back. They were still trying to clean up their own house 2 days out. But already, get those Jews. It's worse in Europe in November 2024. And this is something that I mentioned in one of my first podcasts. The whole Maccabi Tel Aviv soccer team. Amsterdam erupted in an obviously premeditated orgy of violence as fans of Israel-based soccer team Maccabi Tel Aviv descended on the city. 5 of the club's supporters were hospitalized as, quote, men on scooters ransacked the city searching for identifiable Jews to assault. Supporters of Israeli soccer team Maccabi Tel Aviv were targeted for beatings by groups of thugs, Reuters reported. Soon enough, though, European media outlets and officials described the violence as locals reacting to the provocative presence of Israelis. And by Israelis, they mean Jews. And as this weekend's attempted pogrom outside a concert venue hosting a Hanukkah concert showed, it wasn't the Israelis who were looking for a fight. Same thing might have happened in England the following year, just a couple months ago, last month, maybe October, 1 or 2 months ago, but authorities preemptively banned Israelis from attending their own team's game. A subsequent investigation into the decision found that the evidence marshaled in support of it changed to fit the decision, a way of saying that British authorities sought evidence to justify their predetermined decision to mollify violent elements in their midst. The assistant chief constable in charge was later compelled to apologize for insisting that locals of all faiths, including Jews, lobbied to bar Maccabi fans from the city's stadium. The truth of the matter would have been too hard for certain delicate ears to hear. Yes, the UK has a serious problem with Muslim immigrants and Islamists and anti-Semitism because they've imported it. And a big part of the base of the Labor Party are those same people. And so they excuse it, encourage it. On the positive side, if some of these countries that are run on kind of on a parliamentary form of government, I'm not sure what their laws are, but they don't have a constitution. They don't have a written constitution. So, which is how they were able to ban guns and do all sorts of stuff. So, we got new rules, and how they were allowed to violate the right to freedom of religion and freedom of speech when it comes to Christians, praying outside, silently praying outside abortion clinics, or saying mean things online. They were able to do that because they don't have a written constitution protecting those things. If they can get the guts, the backbone, to change their rules, they could probably re-export or get rid of a lot of these people because they don't have the same protections they have here in the U.S. It would probably be a good idea to do that sooner than later. Otherwise, you're going to get more people moving to Israel and maybe the U.S. And I'm not even sure if the U.S. is, completely safe anymore. It's not. Because you had, a couple months ago, you had 2 people go to an Israeli museum thing and some guy shot and killed him, including a Christian woman in the back, right outside. We got a problem. And it's not just Australia. It's not just the UK. Paris is canceling their New Year's Eve concert on the Champs-Élysées as migrant violence grows. Ladies and gentlemen, the Jews aren't the problem. The Christians aren't the problem. The bourgeoisie atheists aren't the problem. You've imported the problem from the Middle East, North Africa, and Pakistan, and those areas. I mean, Great Britain's big problem with Pakistanis, they got grooming gangs. They've been grooming and raping girls for decades. And the Labor government covers it up because, again, they're part of their base. They get them elected. So we'll cover up for that sort of garbage. This is from a New York Post article. Normally proud and defiant French are waving the white flag in the face of migrant terror. Paris has decided to dim the lights on its annual New Year's Eve fete along the iconic Champs-Élysées. Massive midnight concert that drew a jubilant crowd of 1 million people last year, with the festivities having drawn throngs to the most beautiful avenue in the world for 6 decades, has been scrapped and replaced by a pre-recorded video to be viewed in the safety and comfort of French living rooms. French surrendering. It's not entirely fair, but I love the old jokes about why do the French plant trees along the Champs-Élysées so that the Germans could march in the shade. There's also a good market for used World War II era French rifles, never fired, dropped once. Not exactly fair, but you keep playing into the stereotype. Cheese-eating surrender monkeys, as Willie the groundskeeper from The Simpsons characterizes them. Christmas markets are popular and symbolic gathering places that are likely targeted by violent or politically motivated attacks of Jews. No, not of Jews! I got it wrong again. Nunez cited the 2018 Strasbourg Christmas market attack where 29-year-old Sharif Chikat, a French-Moroccan gangster jihadist, opened fire as he yelled Allah Akbar, killing 5 people and wounding 11. Police shot him down after a 2-day manhunt. According to the minister, 6 terrorist plots have been thwarted to date in 2025 in France. Good for you, I guess. When you read the propaganda of terrorist groups, Christmas markets are targets, as are law enforcement officers, as are places of worship of the Jewish community, as are a number of public institutions, he said on French television. Yeah? Not sure what to tell you. You guys got a problem. You got a serious problem. Good that you've thwarted these 6. Who knows how many more there are, and you're worried enough that you're willing to cancel a big celebration on New Year's Eve because you're afraid of this poison in your country. Maybe you ought to do something to get rid of it. This next one is terror hits woke heartland, how left-wing pro-Palestinian marches have taken over Australia, and even a vigil for Bondi Beach terror victims wasn't free from disruption. This is a Daily Mail article. The disruption of the beach vigil yesterday, I guess, was an anti-Zionist Jew who was causing that problem. I'm not sure how. I saw a little video of it. It's not clear exactly what's going on, so I didn't bother to clip it and show it to you. But there are a non-zero number of people who are perfectly willing, even Jews, to feed their co-religionists to the alligator first, and because they're the righteous ones. It's these same idiots who are queers for Palestine. Talk about broken in the head. I'm sorry, man. You go over there, they toss you from buildings. They hang you. We're for them because they're, mistreated like we are. No. You're just stupid. Dave Rich, the head of policy at the UK's Community Security Trust, linked the increase in anti-Semitic incidents since October 7th, 2023, to the rise of pro-Palestine marches. We've had huge protests going on in our city centers and university campuses with languages like calls for intifada, he's told the BBC's Today program. Jewish people see a connection between violent words and violent actions because they're not complete frigging morons. The Bondi attacks were the extreme end of this political spectrum. Globalize the intifada. What did you think that meant? Anyone? Hello? McFly? Seriously. He continues, I'm appalled as an Australian that the worst atrocity against Jews anywhere in the world since October 7th has now taken place here in Australia, he told the Today program. In response to Albanese's call for tougher gun laws in the wake of the attack, Abbott said, what we need most of all is zero tolerance for anti-Jewish hate speech. Again, these are their solutions. I'm not sure the thing is to go after hate speech, although I got mixed feelings on this. I think your better situation is to stop importing a large population that holds beliefs antithetical to the Judeo kind of Christian ethic that founded much of the West, certainly the United States, at one point a lot of Europe, where you had freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, that sort of thing. The people you're importing don't believe in any of that. They're using that against you. What's the line is that, I take advantage of my freedoms of speech while I don't have power because it's what you say is okay. And once I have power, I'm going to quash yours because that's what I really believe. That's not as gracefully or well put as the original, but that's the point. You're bringing in. I've seen videos. Here's imams in schools in Australia, in Great Britain, in the United States, where they sit there, you got to go out and kill Jews. They say it. They say it in English. They're recorded saying it. And believe them. When they tell you who they are, believe them. Article has some charts as well. Australia now has the second highest rate of anti-Semitism in the West, behind Germany. The UK is a close third. Relative increase, Australia. It's gone up in the US. Again, you're looking at this. This rise happens because Israel was attacked in October 2023. That's why you get this rise. Jews defend themselves? Oh my gosh. We must side with the poor Palestinians who've been using all the millions of dollars we've been giving them to build rockets and tunnels and plot this. I'm not sure if I buy the UK number on that, the downward trend in the UK, simply because I'm not sure I trust their reporting. This is from the Anti-Defamation League, some other analysts. I'm not sure I believe Britain's numbers. UK Chief Rabbi Sir Ephraim Mervis has said his cousin and his cousin's wife spent 15 terrifying minutes hiding under a donut stand as gunmen opened fire at the crowded beach. He said the causes of toxic anti-Semitism, which launched the murderous hatred, must be addressed, and called for people to stand together against the normalized rhetoric that demonizes Jews and only the Jewish state. That's a key point, ladies and gentlemen. You get a lot of this, oh, so you're saying we can't criticize Israel. No, I'm not saying you can't criticize Israel. You can't, or that you can't criticize its politics, or you can't criticize its foreign policy, or its domestic policy, or its policy on, which side of the road you should drive on. It's when you focus on them to the extension of everything, to the exception of everything else. You only go at some point, if it's always Israel and it's never France or Syria or Iran or whatnot, it's obvious you're not anti-Israel, you're anti-Semitic. For far too long, we have allowed chants such as globalize the Intifada and from the river to the sea, which incite hatred and which inspire people to engage in hate action. Hate action. Terrorism. Why is it still allowed? What is the meaning of globalize the Intifada? I'll tell you the meaning. It's what happened at the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester on Yom Kippur. I believe that was a firebombing that occurred. It's what happened on Bondi Beach yesterday. Yes. That's what globalize the Intifada means. It means Jews aren't safe anywhere. Not Israelis, because we're not talking about Israelis at Bondi Beach. We're talking about Jews who are Australians. This is not Israel. I saw Hugh Hewitt's opening monologue shortly before I started recording this. He's of the opinion that we need to make a serious effort in the U.S. and likewise other countries probably need to do something similar to address anti-Semitism in the school. At this, inculcate a stand against anti-Semitism in the schools. And he suggests reading a couple of World War II novels and whatnot. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. I would certainly stand behind any efforts to make sure that's taught. I mean, California passed a law saying that starting, I'm not sure if it started yet, maybe starting in a year or so, you have to teach a semester of cultural studies ethnic studies in high school to graduate. And a lot of that is ethnic studies of, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. This is speaking as the guy who took a race relations course in college and got an A in it. Did we talk about race relations in the U.S.? Nope. We talked Arab versus Persian. We talked Malaysia with the Malays versus the ethnic Chinese. So I'm not, in theory, opposed to that. I think at a certain point you're watering down what kids really need, which is the math and the science and the reading and the writing and that sort of stuff. And this isn't part of the curriculum, but teaching kind of a history and looking into a history of anti-Semitism would certainly be time well spent. I know of high schools, I know Pastor Rules High School taught in their English classes Elie Wiesel's Night about the Holocaust. I know other schools do it. That should be required. Because you've got these Groypers on the right, you've got these pro-Palestinians on the left, who all are uniform in denying the Holocaust and denying that history. And it's anti-Semitism. It's a horseshoe. You get it on both the extreme left and the extreme right. It manifests itself a little differently. The hatred's there in both cases. And we shouldn't be standing for it. Europe, Australia, they got a problem. They need to solve it. Wish I had more better stuff for you. There's been some news on the Brown University shooting. That's a little too speculative at this point for me to bother with it. We'll see in the coming days. We'll see if they catch somebody. Again, I don't want to jump on it too quick because, the cops went and practically slandered a guy who had nothing to do with it, whom they released after 12 hours. We'll see. I want to thank you for joining me. Again, please, this holiday season, tell people about this. I got another... I've mentioned this before, and on my initial post on my Substack, I talked about my job hunt in recent years. I got another letter today, communications type position. Thanks, but no thanks. Don't even get an interview. Usually I get an interview unless it's something, but this time I didn't even get an interview. I've got an interview for something else coming up. But I wouldn't need that if I got more people following me here, Substack, YouTube, Facebook, X. Please tell your friends, tell your enemies. Thanks for watching. We'll try and do this again tomorrow. Bye.